started, and hopefully you guys can, I'm going to try to present and give you a lot of information, but then I'm also going to try to leave time for you to ask questions to me at the end, and then we'll do a little Q&A. So let's just go ahead. I'm going to open with a word of prayer here this morning. Lord and Father, I thank you for this time to come into your house. Lord, I just pray that you be with me this morning, speak through me, help me tell the story of North Carolina in such a way that it glorifies you and that you get the glory here this morning. And so, Jesus, we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So, again, a lot of information. So I went to North Carolina on October 19th through the 26th. It was a Saturday to Saturday. The Saturdays were my travel days down and back. Traveling there was a bit of a nightmare because there's so many roads closed in North Carolina. What should have taken 10 hours took 14 plus, pushing 15 hours to get there, and coming home took more like, we took a different route home. Coming home took more like 13 and a half hours coming home. So, all right, so there was 10 of us that went to North Carolina. I was the only one not part of the West Lebanon Christian Church. West Lebanon Christian Church is over by the Indiana-Illinois state line. And so John Collins is this gentleman right here. He is on staff at Hanging Rock, and he was our team leader. He used to work for IDES. He has a lot of experience leading disaster relief teams. And so he was really valuable to us because he's done this 20 or 30 times. This was not a new rodeo for him. I've never done anything like this before. Most of the people on the trip had never done anything like this before, but to John, this was old hat. So again, we had 10 of us going into North Carolina. So I'm going to just kind of go ahead, Terry. I need to explain to you some geography of North Carolina. So I'm going to kind of get out of everybody's way, and I'm going to use this red pointer line. I'm going to show you some things here on this aerial map. So up here is Bat Cave. It's a town, not a big town. And then downriver, so the river is flowing from west to east towards Chimney Rock, which is right here. And then over here off the side of the screen, which you can't see, is a big lake called Lake Lure. And so the river, Broad River, flows down through this little valley. So basically where you see all this brown line here, that's the river as you zoom out a little bit. Now, the road was closed between Chimney Rock and Bat Cave in several places. And so where you see this red line here, road was closed. There was a little bit of piece of road that was closed right here, and there was another stretch of road where the road was closed. And when I say the road was closed, I mean there was no road. Like literally no road. It wasn't just that the asphalt was washed away. It was the bedrock. Everything for the road where the road used to be does not exist. And so I'm talking a drop where the road was up here, and now the road is gone, and the bottom of the river is 40, 50 feet below. Like, again, just no road. It's not like, oh, we go in and repair the road. The road doesn't exist to repair. So there's 3 stretches of road here. This is where you entered. There's a bridge here which somehow survived. It's the only bridge between Lake Lure and Bat Cave that survived the flooding of Chimney Rock. And so this is, we came in from the east. That was the bad thing about getting there, is we had to go all the way around Chimney Rock to enter from the east instead of the west. So we were able to enter right here, and so this is all Chimney Rock, this little stretch right here. And so, okay, so go ahead, Terry. So as we kind of begin to zoom in a little bit, here's the Esmeralda Inn right here, and that's where we stayed during our 6 days in Chimney Rock. And I'm going to tell you more about the Esmeralda Inn. So back up one slide real quick, Terry. So from Bat Cave to Lake to this bridge is almost 3 miles. It's not a long distance, right? It's not very far. It's 3 miles, but 3 miles is a lot when you have no roads. And so that proved to be a big, big problem for us. So go ahead, Terry. So from Esmeralda Inn to the fire station is it's almost 1 mile. So we're not talking a great distance here, right? We're talking from Esmeralda Inn down here a little bit past, down to this right side of the screen, about 1 mile. But again, you have 2 stretches of road that are out. A little stretch of road right here, and this stretch of road right here, which is where the most damage was done in Chimney Rock. And so you can just see that there's a lot more town here. All these photos are pre-flood, right? So I'm going to show you what existed, because when you go to Google Earth, it's still showing Chimney Rock as before the flood at the end of September, right? So if you go to Google Earth now and still try to look at Chimney Rock, you're going to see old photos, right? You're not seeing the current updated photos of Chimney Rock. And so you can see a town here, and there was a little bit of a town there, and that's changed dramatically. I'll show you more about this when we go further. So go ahead and zoom in. So if we keep zooming in, well, actually, zoom back out go back 1 slide, Terry. So when we arrived in Chimney Rock, there's a fire station here, and there's a parking lot here. It's the only parking lot in all of Chimney Rock that still exists. And so it had turned into the disaster relief headquarters, the hub, right? And so there's a little park right here behind the parking lot where disaster relief organizations were setting up, and they were serving food, and they were giving out tools, and they were giving out supplies. And so this little part, you can't even see, it's a little blip there, that was Disaster Relief Central, right? That's where, if you needed anything, food, anything, that's where you went. So when we first got in, we pulled in our cars and our trailers, we parked there, because starting right there, the road does not exist. And so, but what Department of Transportation was doing was Department of Transportation was going into the bottom of the river, which was much, much wider than it was previously, and they were attempting to rebuild a temporary road going upriver towards the Esmeralda Inn. And they were literally just taking rock and debris from the bottom of the river and pushing it into a pile so that we could drive on it as a temporary road, right? And so, so when we got in, and we got our trailers unloaded and unhitched from our vehicles, we were able to drive, and I use that term loosely, we were able to drive on the temporary road up the river, and we were able to, the temporary road ended right here. And so there was a road that went up the mountain into some housing where we had to park our cars because we could not drive from this point to the Esmeralda Inn. So the point from where we parked our cars to the Esmeralda Inn was about 1/4 mile away. So think about that. Think about it from a track and field standpoint. 1 lap around the track is 1/4 mile, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of how far that is. Well, we had to carry all of our gear from where we parked our cars right here to the Esmeralda Inn. Every tool, every clothing, every piece of food we needed for the week, we had to carry literally either on our backs or however we wanted to carry it, right, on our heads, but we had to carry it 1/4 mile between where we parked our cars and the Esmeralda Inn because there was no road for us to drive into the Esmeralda Inn. Doesn't sound like a big deal. It took us 4 hours to unload our vehicles from this point here to the Esmeralda Inn because we're carrying everything. And that is with the help of 10 U.S. soldiers from Fort Campbell who took pity on us and decided, their commanding officer said, go help these poor folks from Indiana and carry all their gear. And they literally showed up and, 10 strong young men, right? It was wonderful. It was a blessing. It was a huge God blessing because I could literally point at something and I would say, I need that at the house over there. And they would pick it up and without another word, they would carry it off to the house for us. And so 20 of us took 4 hours to move our gear into the Esmeralda Inn on Sunday afternoon. 1/4 mile, right? Doesn't seem like a very long way until you're in North Carolina and you have no roads. All right, so again, this is where we parked the cars. This little stretch of road is what prevented us from taking our cars all the way into the Esmeralda Inn. Again, this is hurricane, this is pre-flooding. What's interesting about is again, this all this rock here, that's where the river is. What's really interesting now is, one, the river is much, much wider, and all these trees in the bottom of the river are gone. Not a single one of them still standing. And almost all the homes along the base of the river are gone and have been washed out as well. So what we were having to do is, when we parked our cars here, we were having to hike through some woods. There's a house right here. We were hiking along the back of the house. There was a stone staircase that they had that would allow us to hike down to the road, and then we had to walk all the way over here to the Esmeralda Inn. So it's really weird. This stretch of road that's gone right here, maybe 70 yards, that played havoc with us all week long. Okay, go ahead, Terry. So this is the Esmeralda Inn. The Esmeralda Inn is kind of like a resort. It can sleep probably 70 to 100 people. It's a hotel of sorts, a fancy hotel of sorts. I'll show you more pictures here in a moment. The reason why we were going to the Esmeralda Inn was the town officials had come to the owner of the Esmeralda Inn and said, we want to turn it into a disaster relief worker sleeping quarters. So in the future, when disaster relief workers went into Chimney Rock, where were they going to stay? The city wanted them to stay in the Esmeralda Inn. And so our job was to get the Esmeralda Inn ready for future guests so they could come and do disaster relief in Chimney Rock. But that meant we had to open it up. We had to get it ready for future guests. So here's an aerial shot of the Esmeralda Inn. It's kind of an L-shaped building, very beautiful building. What you really can't see here from the Google Earth is there was a stream that came down out of the mountain, off the mountainside, and ran down the side of the Esmeralda Inn. And the reason why that's key is because what was a stream with 6 inches of water on it, while when we were there was a raging river at the time, at the height of the flood, because it picked up trees that were 30 inches in diameter, and it was pushing them down this little stream. And so on the back side of the Esmeralda Inn, there was feet of debris, dirt, trees, everything imaginable that was literally pushed right up against the backside of the Esmeralda Inn. And it was our job to clear all that and remove all that. And so that's literally what we spent the majority of the week doing, was clearing all the brush that had literally encompassed 3 sides of the backside of the Esmeralda Inn here. And again, this is pre-hurricane, so it's interesting because this road was just literally, it was still there, but it was buried in trees, rock, and other debris. It was unpassable when we were there in Chimney Rock. Okay, Terry. So let me zoom in on a couple of different parts of Chimney Rock. This is a campground. This is a section of road between the town and the Esmeralda Inn. And what you can't see here, there's a whole bunch of houses right here, right along the side of the road. And then where this red area was, it was basically like a trailer park. A lot of mobile homes, a lot of RVs that were parked in this. Chimney Rock is a tourism destination, right? Almost all of the business is centered around tourism. And so, a lot of people owned vacation cottages, vacation homes. Some of the people lived there year-round, but a lot of people went there for the weekends and things like that. And so there was this trailer park here, and so what the yellow denotes is that the properties were badly damaged. They're still standing, but they sustained a lot of damage, and I mean a lot of damage. The red is where they're utterly destroyed. In some cases, just gone. So like if you can see here how many little roofs are there and here, I would say a fraction of those, maybe 10 of those roofs are still standing. The rest are just simply not there, right? They're just again, it's like the road, right? There's just nothing left of that. And I'll show you some pictures here in a few moments. So this is Hickory Nut, just obliterated by the flood. You have to understand something about the amount of rainfall that they got. So on Wednesday before the hurricane hit, they got 7 inches of rain. 7 inches is a lot of rain. On Thursday, they got 7 more inches of rain. And then the hurricane hit on Friday, Saturday. They got 30 inches of rain between Friday morning and Saturday evening. They got 44 inches of rain in less than 4 days. And so what you got to remember about Chimney Rock, right, is Chimney Rock, go back to the very first map I showed you, Terry. So what you have here is you have mountain ridge. The river is at the bottom of the valley. And so you have this big V shape, right? And so when you have that much water, where does it all flow? It flows downhill to the lowest point, which for Chimney Rock is the river, right? And the town was built along the side of the river. So imagine you get 3.5 feet of rain in less than 4 days, and so the river just swells and swells and swells. Again, because all the water is funneling from this ridge down to the river, and from this ridge down into the river, right? It's acting as a big funnel, 3.5 feet of water per square feet over 3 miles. Just imagine the volume of water that you have here and its destructive capabilities. Okay, so Terry, go on. I'm sorry. So this is the town of Chimney Rock itself. This is the parking lot where we parked our trailers. This is the fire station. This is the park where all the disaster relief was being conducted out of. There's a big restaurant right here that I'll show you pictures of in a moment. It's still standing, badly damaged. Again, these yellow areas are places where the structures are still standing, but there's a lot of damage. So there's all kinds of little businesses here along the side of either side of the road where the whole building was mostly underwater. And so they're literally gutting it down to the foundation, down to the stud, and they're going to completely have to rebuild the interior of those buildings from the inside out. The red are, again, just businesses or properties that are gone. They're destroyed. And so you can see there's a bridge here, gone, just gone, right? So, and some of this will make more sense as I show you more pictures here as I go along. Okay, so go ahead, Terry. Okay, so this is the Esmeralda Inn. This is a picture from the ground, from the front of it, and a beautiful building, 3-story building with full basement underneath it. The building itself sustained very little damage in the hurricane and the flooding. It's on high ground. It's on just in high enough ground that the floodwaters came up within feet of the front door, but not into the building. Now, what is key is remember that stream that comes down behind the Esmeralda Inn? It came down the backside of the building. On the backside of the building, there's a stairway going into the basement. The flood waters were so strong, it ripped a steel door off of its hinges and pushed it around the bottom of the basement and bent the steel door in the process as it zigzagged its way through the basement. I'll show you some pictures of that here in a moment. But the Esmeralda Inn, by and large, was relatively undamaged compared to all the other devastation around it. And again, it's probably the only property in Chimney Rock that can sleep 70 to 100 people at a given time. So this is Kim and Don Mason. They are the managers of the inn, and they were our local go-to people when we needed anything, and they were wonderful, very strong Christians. In fact, Kim is the cousin of John Collins. The whole reason why we were there in Chimney Rock to help the Esmeralda Inn was the relationship between John and Kim. And so what happened like 3 weeks ago was the city came to the Esmeralda Inn. They came to Don and Kim and said, we want to make your inn a disaster relief site. And Kim was like, how are we ever going to make this possible? How are we ever going to make it ready for future guests? And literally within 3 hours, John called Kim and said, I have a team from Indiana that wants to come and help you. What can we do? Right? So God immediately answered prayer. The city called her, said, we want to turn the Esmeralda Inn into a disaster relief site. And then 3 hours later, John says, we want to come help. How can we do that? And we were uniquely suited. We were a chainsaw team. 4 of the guys had a lot of experience in chainsaws. They had big saws. They knew how to really clear land. And that's what we did. That was one of the primary things we did there was we chainsawed a lot. And the amount of chainsawing that needs to be done there in Chimney Rock is something that's going to go on for months and months and months. Okay, so let me show you some more pictures of the Esmeralda. Go ahead, Terry. So this is the inside, this is the center of the building. A big, beautiful entryway, big stone fireplace here, beautiful railing where they took twigs and made it into railing. Keep going, Terry. Big, beautiful building. This is where we're staying, right? Now, here's the key, is the Esmeralda had no power, no water, and no sewer. Okay? No power, water, or sewer. So one of the first things that we had to do on Sunday was establish a temporary latrine, right? Someplace to go to the bathroom. Because the road's not open, because the road's closed, we can't get porta-johns into the Esmeralda Inn. So we set up a bucket, we put trash bags in the bucket. One of the guys had brought a toilet seat lid, and we literally set it on top of the bucket, and that was our bathroom for the entire week, right? Because you have no power, and you have no running water, and you have no sewer. So you have this big, beautiful building, but when it got dark, it's really dark because there's not a single power inside the building. And so again, keep going, Terry. Just this big, beautiful chandelier. Here's the big stone fireplace from the second floor, and beautiful, beautiful building, right? It's going to be a great house for temporary workers because it's just simply beautiful. Keep going, Terry. So here's the back side of the building, and you can see here on the ground, this is where all of the mud and the trees washed down from the stream behind the Esmeralda Inn up against the back side of the building. Right here was a shed that was obliterated, that a tree fell on it, literally flattened it, and so we had to clear the tree, and we basically eventually ripped out the whole shed. What was the saving grace for the Esmeralda Inn is the backside had all these steel and concrete staircases on as emergency exits, and that's really what saved the building. Because if those steel staircases aren't on the backside of the building, all that debris rushes up against the backside of the building and then potentially does a lot of damage to the building. And so those steel emergency staircases that you see like right here really helped kind of shelter, almost act as a barrier to prevent the building itself. So here's the shed. That's what's left of it. That's after we removed all the trees off the top of it. They're standing where the shed used to be. The shed just had a lot of lawn equipment in it, lawnmowers, weed whackers, power washers. There was 3 feet of debris in the bottom of the shed. We were literally unburying all the yard equipment, which was a total loss, and just carrying it out to the brush pile to be discarded with the rest of the trash. So there was several huge blessings that God prepared a way for us in advance before we ever got there. So there's a cool story about this little white SUV that you see here. It's actually a high-end Lexus. And Kim and Don owned this car. And then when they went to evacuate, they had 3 vehicles there, with the oldest and poorest of the 3 vehicles being this Lexus. But they can only evacuate 2 vehicles, right? So they decided to leave this Lexus with 300,000 miles on it at the Esmeralda Inn. And I think God intentionally spared the Esmeralda and that Lexus for us. And I'll tell you why. Because that Lexus became our workhorse, literally our workhorse during the week. We put that thing through the paces. Because what we were doing is it had a hitch, had 4-wheel drive, really, really key when you don't have roads, and it had a hitch. And we had brought hitches so we could hitch tow straps and cables up to it, and we could literally, logs that were buried in the mud, and you could only see this much of the log, we would tie a tow strap and a chain around it, and we were literally using the 4-wheel drive Lexus to pull those out of the dirt and then haul them down to the brush pile. The other thing is, no, stay there, there's a black frame trailer here. So the funny thing is, next to the Esmeralda Inn, there was a house that was utterly destroyed. Its car was upside down, smashed to pieces, and yet in the property is this black trailer that was buried in dirt. Now, it doesn't make any sense that everything on the property would be destroyed except for this black trailer, except for that God wanted us to use it while we were there. And so at one point, John, our leader, went over to the property next door, and he's like, you know what, guys? There's a trail over here. If we unbury it, we got to dig out the wheels, but if we unbury it, we could tow it. We had to lift it over a stone wall to get it onto level ground, but then we could tow it, we could use it to haul brush, anything around the property that we needed. And so we did. We probably spent 2 hours burying it and getting it over the stone wall, so onto the property so that we could attach it to the back of the Lexus and pull it wherever we need it. And did we use that a lot? Because what happened is, this is where we're generating all the brush. Way back over here is our brush pile. This is where we're hauling everything, which doesn't seem like a long way until you have to haul every branch and every piece of trash from here to here. And so we could blow it on the trailer, drive it back, literally back it up, push it off the trailer. It saved us hours. And so God provided a vehicle for us and a trailer for us where there was no road and there was no other way to get a vehicle and trailer in there, so that when we showed up, all we had to do was use it. We had to rescue the trailer a little bit. It had minor damage. So again, this is I can't tell what that is. I think that may be a power washer that was in the shed. Again, a complete and utter loss. So, okay, go ahead, Terry. This is the other side of the Esmeralda Inn. This is the air conditioning units that are, again, probably a complete and total loss. They were underwater, and they have debris inside the units. What's key here is this is that little stream I told you about. There's a giant rock here, which was already there. It was not moved by the flood. But what I did not get is a photo of the tree when we first arrived, because this whole area there was a big tree down, and there was 2 widowmakers hanging out of a tree, still standing on top of this rock. And so the one thing that we spent some time doing one of the afternoons was climbing up on top of this rock with our chainsaws, and cutting out the widowmakers, because they posed a danger if we left them there for future groups. And we wanted to clear that liability. Now, maybe we assumed some of that liability ourselves, but I was glad to do that. So go ahead, Terry. On the back side, this is a picture of the back side after it's already been dug out a little bit. There was a well, and right back over here was their propane tank, which were completely buried in the debris and the silt. And so when we got there at one point, John was like, show us where the well is so we don't damage the well as we're digging out around it, and the propane tank. The propane tank was a good-sized tank. I mean, it was a 500-gallon tank that was... when we first got there, you had no idea where the well and the propane tank were. And so she's like, it's in this area. And so we literally spent a couple hours just identifying where the well was, identifying where the propane tank was, so that we did not destroy or damage those 2 pieces. So go on, Terry. I told you about the basement that took on water. This is the basement. So this is the back concrete steps going into the basement. It ripped off the steel door, which was right here over this entrance. Parts of the basement had between 6 and 12 inches of mud across the basement. The saving grace was there's a door way over here on the far side, on the right-hand side of the building. So the water actually flowed through the basement and out the other side because it had that much force and that much power behind it. But we had to basically muck the basement. It's the only part of the building that we really had to muck. And so you can't see here, but there's probably 6 inches of mud here in this hallway in the basement. Go ahead, Terry. So we had a crew that spent probably 3 days in the basement. The only thing they did was removing all of the dirt out of the basement, off the concrete floor, and literally ripping out every piece of drywall in that basement because it absorbed so much moisture, it was a total loss. So you see here, this 2x4 wall, this is one of the exterior walls, just, ripping off the drywall, putting in wheelbarrows, and hauling it out to the brush pile. Go on, Terry. So here's, this particular wall had steel studs instead of wood. This is the crew from our group that helped. Here's one of the wheelbarrows of just drywall that they're hauling out of the basement. That's a big part of getting the Esmeralda ready for future groups. Okay, go ahead, Terry. Again, this is the backside. This patio was covered in probably a foot or 2 of dirt. This is what it looked like after we got all the dirt off of it. What's key is we eventually got use of a skid steer I'll tell you that story here in a moment. But we had to clear all this by hand because we could not get the skid steer in between this narrow opening here. This is actually a generator here that the building, that was already there for the building, that I think is also probably a total, complete loss. The generator will probably have to be completely replaced in time. So again, basically the water's coming down and it's hitting the back side of this fire escape and these back kitchen doors. And so this actually looks a lot better than what it did when we first arrived. Go ahead, Terry. This is the final product. And I can't tell you what joy this brings me to show you this photo. Because where this is Casey right here. He's one of the guys in our group. When we got here, there was trees all across here, and there was probably 4 to 5 feet of dirt and debris where Casey was standing. Now, a funny thing about, we didn't have open roads until the very end of the week. The DOT finally got our road open to where we're at on Wednesday night. So Thursday and Friday, we could get our side-by-sides, we could get our gators in there. One of our guys is an experienced heavy machine, a lot of experience running bulldozers, heavy machinery, excavators, skid steers. I don't know how, but he convinced a man in town who owned a skid steer to loan the skid steer to him for 24 hours, and he meant 24 hours. We got it on 6:01 sharp, and at 6 o'clock sharp, the 24 hours later, we were expected to have the skid steer back in his possession there in town. And so that was all day Thursday. And so what Ryan did all day Thursday was he literally did nothing but move dirt for 12 to 14 hours. He started at 6 a.m. and he didn't finish until really dusk that same night. And so what this is this is a picture of the side of the building after all that dirt has been removed. Feet and feet of dirt. And there was actually a stone paveway here, sidewalk, that we actually found when we removed all the dirt. This is hugely satisfying. I mean, this is what a team of 10 people worked on for a week, and this is the final picture, right? So this may not look like a lot to you. This is victory, right? This is so satisfying, right? Okay, Terry. So now let me show you some pictures from Chimney Rock. So I told you there was a big restaurant here, which was on high ground, largely unscathed, but it had some damage here on the side. And so there's some more pictures here. But before you go there, Terry, what's interesting is that this is a drain pipe coming out from up mountain, and water was just pouring out of this drain pipe. And people were like, well, where's that water coming from? Well, when you have houses and all these buildings up mountain of this restaurant, this is basically a storm sewer, right? All this water is just pouring out of the side of this hill right here where the storm sewer used to be. So go ahead. Here's another picture of the restaurant right here from high ground. This is the river. So by the time we got here, what the DOT and the Corps of Engineers had done is take a river that was 600 feet wide and push it back down to 100 feet wide, right? So they literally raised the dirt and basically created a channel for the water to go through so that they could work and begin to rebuild all the other area around it. Okay, go ahead, Terry. So this is one of the buildings from the downtown area. And the buildings that were boarded up, a lot of them had scriptures like this one does, with Romans 12:12. And so people, when they would board up a restaurant, they would put a piece of scripture on that boards over the windows to remind people of Scripture and God's role in all this. And so this was very common. We saw a lot of this on buildings that were boarded up in Chimney Rock. This is the house that you can't tell, but the front corner of it here was destroyed. That's the roof sitting on the road because that house or that business is completely destroyed. It's going to have to be eventually completely leveled and then rebuilt from the ground up. Go ahead, Terry. These are some more houses along the river. You can just see, here's the river down here, how it just ripped off the backside of all those houses. What's really interesting is right near that restaurant on the north side of the river, there was a small amusement parks. Somebody had some like children's rides, like carnival rides, right? And that's what this orange tent is. And there's a little like merry-go-round that was literally in pieces. It was just bent and twisted into this mangled mess here on high ground. This is the temporary road that the DOT had built Go ahead, Terry. This is another house there, the backside of which is exposed badly, a lot of damage. This is that restaurant. This is the bottom of the river. This is where the river was. The river was all the way up against this bank right here. So this restaurant had a big patio where you could eat outside. The patio was gone. The roof that was over it is actually in the bottom of the river. That's the roof for the pieces of the roof for the patio. There's some roof damage up here. The restaurant's going to largely be saved. I don't think it has any foundational issues, but it's going to take years to rebuild this and bring this back new again. Okay, Terry. Here's another picture of the downtown. You can just see the roads are just covered in dirt, like layers and layers of dirt, everything. That's Chimney Rock. The other thing interesting about Chimney Rock is that despite all the flooding that happened, they had not had rain in the 3 weeks prior to our visit. So Chimney Rock was extremely dry, extremely dusty, and they were under a burn ban, which further made our job even more difficult because all the brush that we could have generated, my first instinct is to get some gasoline and set it on fire. We couldn't do it because the fire marshal actually threatened to remove us from Chimney Rock if we set any brush fires for fear of catching other things on fire. So it made our job a little harder because it meant that the brush that we would normally just burn up, we could not do while we were there. So here's the house, sustained a lot of damage right there on the north side of the river. Again, the water, so here's the river down here. The water is up here. Like, not only is the basement underwater, but that whole first floor is probably underwater. Just to give you an idea of the height of the water in Chimney Rock. Okay, go ahead, Terry. Here's a house that's on I'm standing in the bottom of the river when I'm taking this picture. This house has structural damage, and they were trying desperately to shore it back up with 2x4s to keep it from literally falling over. I don't know how they ever saved that house. Like, I don't know how they ever get enough foundation under it to literally save that property because it's, this is actually the entrance. So this mountain behind it is actually Chimney Rock State Park. And it's a beautiful park. I didn't get to go in it. But this is the entrance. Behind these stone pillars, if you will, was a bridge that took you into Chimney Rock State Park. And the bridge was obliterated and destroyed in the flood. Go ahead, Terry. Here's more pictures of downtown. What's interesting about this little building is this is a tourism center. The only purpose of this building is to provide public restrooms for the tourists on hand. But what you can't see is the water took a telephone pole that was standing straight up, and it drove it all the way through the corner of this house. It's still standing. And so, like, literally, you could walk from this point right here into the center of the building because this telephone pole literally just drove a hole in the side of the building, which, again, will have to be rebuilt at a later point in time. Okay, go ahead, Terry. Just more devastation standing in the river. Here's the bridge those stone pillars I told you about for the entrance to State Park. There's a bridge here, and that's all that's left of the concrete on one side of the bridge. There's no bridge here going over into the park. Okay, Terry. Here's some pictures while you're still in Chimney Rock. These don't look like a lot, but right here, there used to be a house, and there's no house, right? Just nothing. The only thing you can see is where the foundation was up against the side of the road, and there was a sidewalk and some brickwork up here. The rest of the house is gone. And the rest of the house, like all the other debris, was pushed downriver into Lake Lure, which I'll show you here in a few moments. This is another example of a house that was on the north side of the river. The only thing left is the brick chimney of the house. That's it, right? The rest of the house, the foundation, everything is gone. That's the only thing left is the chimney standing against the side of the road. Go ahead, Terry. This is a house, a beautiful house. Look like a really nice house in its day. This is from the riverside. This is from upstream a little bit. The water just eroded all the land around it until it literally just caved into the river. And this actually happened when we got there. This was still standing. It was still attached to the house. And while we were there, just the sheer weight of the roof with no supports underneath it caused this to fall into the river. Go ahead, Terry. This is one of the supports for the bridge crossing the road, just gone. This is one of the houses that survived, but there was a huge
pile of brush and trees that was pushed up against the upstream side of the house. So it's not really clear here, but it's going to take a lot of machinery to dig away all of that brush. Go ahead, Terry. I'm standing down in the bottom of the river here. What you can't see here is this huge rock. This is a 25, 30-foot trailer, double axle steel trailer at the bottom of the river that's just a mangled mess, right? That's all that's left of the trailer. Complete and utter loss. This is a business alongside of one of the low areas. What you can't see here is that these are the bottoms of the windows. There's 4 feet of dirt and debris inside that building. That'll have to be completely removed before it can be restored. Okay. This is the trailer park that I told you about. This is what's left of the trailer park. Here's a mobile home. I think that's the remnants of a mobile home, another mobile home, just pushed around and like little toy ships in a much bigger body of water. Okay, Terry. Here's that trailer park again. The side of the temporary road goes right up the side of it. Here's a little compact car that just everything there is a complete, total loss. Go ahead, Terry. Here's a trailer, steel trailer, double axle trailer that's wrapped around the base of a tree. I don't even know where it came from, but it's a total loss. Go ahead. I put a picture. This is a ginormous rock. What's interesting is that you can't see it very well. There's steel poles here so this rock was clearly visible and exposed on the top part of it. It had somebody taken a drilled holes and put steel pipes into the top of this giant rock, and they're all flattened. They're all laying down on the side of the rock. The rock is still there, and steel poles are still embedded in the rock, but they're literally bent over like pieces of paper on the top part of that rock. This is a hotel. Not only was it underwater, but it had significant roof damage here. This is a little building that was like a tourism center. It's literally you can't see it. It's literally standing on it. If this is the building before, it's now, when it came to rest, it's on its side. The whole building is turned 90 degrees on its side. Go ahead, Terry. More damage along the river. Keep going, Terry. Okay, so when we parked our cars up here behind this house. We had to come along the backside of this house, hike down this path, but this road is gone. So when we go to hike the road back up to the Esmeralda Inn, this is the first thing we came to. There was a hill here where a landslide occurred, a lot of landslides all over the place, and it pushed all of this debris and telephone poles and telephone wires down into the road. This is kind of what we found when we arrived, and we need to carry all of our supplies through this space. So the first thing we do is we break out our saws, we start cutting on the trees, and then we literally took our grinder, and I had brought a grinder, fired up the generator, powered up the grinder, and we're literally taking our grinder and cutting apart the power lines and the support lines for this telephone pole because we needed to remove it from the road. We needed to be able to get the car through there, and the only way to do it was to literally cut it into pieces. And so that's what we found on the road when we arrived. But so again, here's a section of road where there's road, there's no road, road, and no road, right? That's the story of Chimney Rock. Keep going, Terry. All right, here's pictures right around the Esmeralda Inn. These houses somehow survived. They were mostly underwater, but they survived. Whoever built those foundations did a heck of a job because they're still standing where almost nothing else is. This is debris, just piles of debris, right? These orange cables here are fiber cables that were ripped out of the river when it was destroyed, and that's what's left of these fiber optic internet cables. Debris everywhere. Here is a section of road. There was a house here that had a small building with washers and dryers on it, and it ripped off the backside of the building, and these washers and dryers were literally just inches away from falling into the river. Keep going, Terry. So this is the house that was this is actually where the trailer was parked, in front of this house. So what's key is this house its foundation is back over here. This tree, this ginormous tree, this is the same house from the side and from the front. This ginormous tree came from way up here on the top of the mountain. And there was a mudslide there. This tree was moving so fast, it clipped off all its branches. This tree went top to bottom first, through the back side of the house, then through the front side of the house. Its root ball and all exited the front side of the house on the front side of the porch, laying downriver. And so what that meant was this tree was moving down the hill fast enough. It hit the house so hard and so fast, it penetrated the front and the back and came to rest in the front yard. So I happen to know a guy who's an insurance adjuster, and he said there's factors for determining levels of damage to houses like this. And he estimated the tree to be moving 70 miles an hour when it hit the backside of that house. This is a tree that's probably 30, 36 inches in diameter, right? And it's probably easily 120 feet long from top to bottom. Moving 70 miles an hour, and it pierced the house from front to back. That's the level of devastation you're dealing with in Chimney Rock. Here's the car in the front yard, upside down, destroyed. Here's one of the pillars for the bridge, which doesn't exist anymore. Go ahead, Terry. Here, you can't see this very well. This is a steel beam for one of the bridges that hit a rock, got snagged on the rock, and then was beat into this U shape. That was a steel beam, a big beam that was bent into pieces. And I'm probably, I have exceeded time. Here's the police car. It's sitting on top of rocks. We're going to go through a lot of slides very quickly. Keep going, Terry. Houses under rock. Here's a mudslide off of one of the sides going down at the bottom of the river. Go ahead. Here's the road. Here's the construction DOT crews working on rebuilding the road. I got to say, one of the highlights of the week is when they opened that road. Oh, my goodness. We were literally giving each other high fives. We're celebrating when that road opened, because then we could get all of our supplies into our vehicles into the Esmeralda Inn. This is Lake Lure. So this is a beautiful recreation lake, and it is literally, this is the lake in the center of the lake. There's so much debris that was pushed downriver into the lake. That's what it looks like. This is a deck. This is somebody's deck that's literally floating in the river, in the middle of the river, not on the side, in Lake Lure, because it all washed down river into the lake. Keep going. You guys probably heard about a crew from West Virginia. There were a bunch of miners from West Virginia who were working on building a temporary road from Bat Cave to the Esmeralda Inn. And they were a bunch of good old boys, right? They had all the equipment they needed to build temporary roads. And we met these guys, a good group of guys. There's like 9 or 10 of them there. And they were building a road at twice the speed of DOT. Because they're a bunch of good old boys, right? And they have a lot of experience, and they have the right tools to do it. And they were phenomenal. They were a huge godsend. I took a couple pictures here just of the beauty of North Carolina. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful place. And yeah, you wouldn't know it because it was just ravaged by the hurricane. This is Chimney Rock. This is a little outlook that you can climb up to. And there's a flag up here with a viewing platform. There's a beautiful waterfall here at the top of one of the mountain ridges. A beautiful space, right? Ravaged by a lot of water. So here's our picture of our group. This is from a hotel on Sunday morning. I am right there in the middle. Man, God bless us with the right people. We had such a good week. Worked together as a team. Got a lot accomplished. And we accomplished our mission. Our job was to get the Esmeralda Inn ready for future guests, and we did, right? Through God's grace, through God providing a car, a trailer, providing teams of other people to make it happen, we accomplished our mission. Right now, if you wanted to go to Esmeralda, if you wanted to go to Chimney Rock, you could go, and you could stay at the Esmeralda Inn and have a place to stay and a road to get there that didn't exist when we arrived. So I ran over. I apologize. So much to share, so little time to share. Any questions before we get ready for worship? Just one quick final note. The Esmeralda Inn has no power, no water, no sewer, They said it's going to take 8 months to get power back to the Esmeralda Inn. 8 months. That's next summer before they get power back. And they estimate that it'll be 2 to 2.5 years before they get sewer back working at the Esmeralda Inn. That means every one of those houses along the river that still has a structure will have to use porta-johns or other temporary latrines for 2 years before they get a working sewer system back installed in Chimney Rock. Because when the roads are gone, so is all the infrastructure along the road. So if you have more questions for me, come see me afterwards. I'm going to end there because I know the worship team needs to get ready here. So thank you for your time this morning. And my only hope was that God gets the glory for what was accomplished this week through our team in Chimney Rock. So thank you, everybody.